No, 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 and no. Saturday's referendum delivers Tsai a vote of confidence, but a low turnout has left people wondering who the votes benefit. An electoral flop. Hong Kong's LegCo vote registers the lowest turnout in 30 years. He said, she said. The drama surrounding a Taiwanese-American singer's divorce intensifies. And the wrath of Rai. The most powerful typhoon to hit the Philippines this year leaves more than 200 dead. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. A low turnout and results along political lines are raising questions about Taiwan's referendum system after it was put to the test last Saturday. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party managed to get a narrow majority to back its stance on each of the 4 issues on the ballot. It has left the opposition Kuomintang re-examining its strategy of pushing for referendums to gain support. As Bing Wang reports, people in Taiwan are asking who these voting exercises really benefit.
The straight no results of Taiwan's Saturday referendums are being hailed as a vote of confidence for the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, or the DPP. The issues had to do with pork imports, nuclear energy, saving the algal reef, and the referendum system itself. And the DPP had urged their supporters to vote no on all 4 of them. President Tsai called it a win for democracy in Taiwan.
也要谢谢所有参与公投的台湾人民，无论你投的是同意或者是不同意，都是公民意志的展现。公投没有谁输谁赢的问题，只有国家未来要怎么走的问题。
The opposition Kuomintang, or KMT, had advocated on all yes votes, and the final tally saw voting fall largely along party lines, with about 4 million no votes and between 3.7 to 3.9 million yes votes for each issue. This meant voters mostly voted all in favor of the 4 issues or all against. Former Vice President of Taiwan, Annette Lu, also a member of the DPP, blasted her party's handling of the votes.
当然，整个结论，我是会觉得民进党要对历史负责，两党都把它变成政党对决，模糊的焦点。去投票的人只知道要投全部同意或全部反对，我觉得这是扭曲了公投的意思。
While the votes were in DPP's favor, the victory is bittersweet. Local polls had indicated a turnout of 75%, but ultimately it was much lower.
这次在两党如此的铺天盖地的动员，也不过4成1，还没有完全推出基本盘。那如果未来政党没有像这次全力动员的话，我想那投票率可能低到我们没有办法想象。
Pundits say the low voter turnout could be due to a variety of reasons, such as cold weather, voter fatigue, not caring enough about the issues, and a lack of detailed analysis of the 4 measures. Former KMT chairman Johnny Chang was quick to criticize the referendum system.
需要各政党好好行使的一个地方，我们的公民权的行使是不是已经彻底的在这一次的公投里面崩坏了？我们的公投制度的设计，这是第一次跟大选脱钩，但是相对也是失败的一次，所以公投绑大选的必要性，显然是必须要重新再思考的。
The ruling DPP could claim victory on the referendums, and much falls on the KMT for failing to mobilize its voter base. But pundits on both sides are now wondering if referendums have strayed too far from their original intention, which is to give the Taiwanese people an informed and independent voice on critical issues, without feeling like they must vote along partisan lines. James Raynar and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
To find out more about why the referendums failed to pass, TaiwanPlus reporter Louise Watt spoke to Brian Hugh, the founding editor of the online magazine New Bloom. She started by asking him what he makes of the results, or non-results, at the weekend.
It was thought ahead of time that, for example, rain could potentially affect the turnout. There was not rain, however, there was cold, at least in Taipei. I think it was also a question as to which party would just come out on top. And most polling did actually have the results very different from the present, actually, in which it seemed much more contested, and results on some of the referendums would have been in favor of the KMT. But the results all swung in the direction of the DPP. What I think was also interesting is that people seem to be voting along party lines, either for yeses or for noes. There's not actually room for voting separately on these issues individually.
The Premier has said the fact that the 4 referendums didn't pass shows that the public has confidence in the government's policy. Do you think this is right?
It's hard to know. I think it depends on who came out. The people that came out maybe were people that supported the DPP, that were in favor of no. Maybe the DPP was simply more successful at mobilizing its party base than the already demoralized KMT was. However, I think what is clear is that it will be taken in the discourse, in the political discourse and in the media discourse, as a sign of a mandate for the Tsai administration. So the Tsai administration is in a stronger position now going into 2022 midterm elections. For example, it did actually field some of the candidates that it plans to run in 2022 and have them campaign for the referendum. And so if the referendum had been a defeat, that would have damaged potentially the chances of these candidates that it's fielding.
During the referendum, there were some issues raised that perhaps there's voter fatigue with another nationwide vote in just a few years. So are people, despite what people say about Taiwan having such a vibrant democracy and a model for democracy in Asia, are there too many votes in Taiwan?
So I think this is actually a very interesting question because of the fact that with the referendum on a different date from national elections, that means we're going to have a vote this year in 2021, election in 2022, possibly another referendum vote in 2023, and then presidential elections in 2024. And so who is going to come out for these votes that occur every year are a drain on resources and do require people to take some time off and go out and go vote, though it can be quite quick. And so I think that also will lead to questions. In for example, comparing this referendum campaign to 2018 or 2020, there's not the same sense of ubiquitous campaigning, in which campaigning was simply everywhere around you, no matter where you went. And this was the thing that dominated Taiwanese news and discourse. There's not this sense of existential crisis regarding Taiwan's future that one saw, for example, in the lead up to 2020 elections.
While Saturday's referendums may have failed to inspire a high turnout, there was one topic that gripped Taiwan this weekend: a celebrity divorce. Wang Lihom, a Taiwanese-American singer-songwriter known for his pristine public image, announced his separation from Li Jinglei after 8 years of marriage. However, shortly after the announcement, Li took to social media accusing Wang of cheating on her for years and abandoning his family. Ken Ning has a story.
Betrayal and infidelity. The breakup of pop star Wang Lihong and his wife Li Jinglei is anything but amicable. Since announcing their divorce on December 15, the pair have become the center of a scandal that has rocked the Chinese-speaking world. It all started with accusations Li made on Chinese social media platform Sina Weibo. On it, she claimed Wang had cheated on her, hired prostitutes, and abandoned his family, shattering the wholesome image that the singer had cultivated since the start of his career. The situation worsened when Wang's father shared a handwritten letter with the media to help his son. He accused Li of threatening to ruin Wang's career if they didn't marry and demanding millions of dollars in living expenses. On social media, Li Jinglei responded saying the Wangs were trying to buy her silence. Wang arrived back in Taiwan late Saturday night and did not respond to requests for comment. The impact of the scandal is already damaging his career. Multiple brands have announced an end to their partnerships with the singer. On Monday, Wang released a statement on Facebook apologizing for his actions and announcing he would be taking a break from his career to focus on his family. But for the millions of fans Wang has built up across Taiwan, China, and the rest of the Chinese-speaking world, an apology is unlikely to ease disappointment at the artist's alleged behavior. Kama Xu and Ken Ning for TaiwanPlus.
Hong Kong saw its lowest voter turnout ever recorded in yesterday's Patriots-Only legislative elections. Turnout fell nearly 60% from the territory's last election in 2019, when pro-democracy candidates won almost all of the district council seats. Despite receiving around the same number of votes yesterday as in 2019, pro-Beijing candidates took every available spot in the Legislative Council. This is after an overhaul of the electoral system by Beijing that reduced directly elected legislators to around a fifth of the chamber. The rest are returned by special interest groups and a small committee of Beijing loyalists. All candidates must also pass a vetting process to ensure their loyalty to the central government. No opposition parties took part in Sunday's poll. Ryan Ho Kilpatrick asked Samuel Chu, founder of the Hong Kong Democracy Council and Campaign for Hong Kong, why the turnout was so low.
I think that this is just a confirmation that this whole election, quote unquote, has been rigged from the beginning. The decision has already been made, going back to the imposition of the national security law and then throughout the last year and a half of the arrest, the jailing, the rigging of the elections process, the whole idea that they're building this now redundancy to ensure that there's no actual election, free determination of candidates would ever take place. And so I think that the turnout at 30% is higher than I actually even expected.
Yesterday, as the polls opened, Chief Executive Carrie Lam defended the new electoral system as more democratic than the district council elections in 2019, where every citizen had an equal vote. What do you think of that claim?
Well, I think that Carrie Lam and her administration in Beijing have trotted out every spin they can have, from saying that people are happy with her, that's why they're not turning out to vote, to more people are going to vote in this, and then to this really falsifiable idea that somehow this is more democratic. I think what's clear is that they know that this is a performative ritual. This is a process that was controlled from the beginning, 100% from the Beijing authorities and the regime. And so it is preposterous to suggest, and I think that anybody who looks at the process would know that this is closer to an election in North Korea than it is an actual election like we see here in the United States.
Now that Legislative Council is completely stacked with pro-establishment legislators, how do you think they will operate going forward?
Well, I think that, we see now that basically people who would have been running and standing in election for this LegCo elections are basically, most of them are in jail now. And I think that this just confirms what many Hong Kongers have basically felt over the last 2, 3, even 4 or 5 years, which is that there's no longer any part of this government, this system of government in Hong Kong that represent their interests. And I think that even those who might, different political stand about the pro-democracy movement will have to be forced to acknowledge that this is really now just a rubber stamp for Beijing. So I think that what you will see is a continuation of this performative aspect of the legislature in Hong Kong. But I also see that this is actually in some way a pivotal shift in the opposition and the pro-democracy movement, right? Because they no longer now have even this veneer or this facade, and that there's no longer any doubt that opposition must live outside and must live either in exile, behind bars, or underground.
World number 1 Dai Ziying of Taiwan grabbed the runner-up spot in the women's singles final at the Badminton World Federation World Championships in Helva, Spain. Dai, silver medalist at the Tokyo Olympics, lost out to world number 3 Akane Yamaguchi of Japan. Dai took an early lead but appeared to be hampered by a thigh injury as the game went on and was unable to clear low shots. She eventually lost the final in straight sets. Despite the defeat, Dai ends 2020 as a top-ranked female player and the Federation's Female Player of the Year. Coming up here on TaiwanPlus, a COVID crisis hits the world of sport. Details in a moment.
湾最有人情味的地方。
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus. For more great news from Taiwan and around the world, download the app TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. A reminder of our top story. A low turnout and results along political lines of Taiwan's referendums last Saturday are raising questions about the value of referendums for the voting public. Saturday's vote resulted in 4 noes, favouring the DPP's stance on all the issues on the ballot. Former student protest leader Gabriel Boric has been elected Chile's next president. With almost 99% of polling stations reporting, Boric won 56% of the vote, comfortably defeating the far-right lawmaker Jose Antonio Cast. The election was the country's most divisive in decades. The two candidates offered different visions on everything from pensions and privatization to human rights. Boric pledged in particular to empower women and indigenous people and to raise spending. 35-year-old Boric will become Chile's youngest president when he takes office in March. Flooding triggered by torrential rains has forced more than 30,000 people from their homes in Malaysia. Only roofs were visible in parts of Selangor state, which surrounds the capital, Kuala Lumpur. Rivers are overflowing after several consecutive days of rain, submerging residential areas and cutting off major roads. On Monday, rescuers were still working to reach people stranded outside their homes and trapped by vehicles. More than 200 people have been killed by Typhoon Rai in the Philippines, according to local media, and dozens of others are missing. The tropical storm ravaged the country's southern islands, leaving behind a path of destruction. Jaime Ocon reports.
It's the strongest storm to hit the Philippines this year. Typhoon Rai made landfall on Thursday, reaching the intensity of a Category 5 storm, the highest classification, with speeds topping 195 kilometers an hour. As the recovery process begins, the death toll is in the hundreds. In a year already marked by the challenges of COVID-19, the Philippines is struggling to deal with the aftermath of the typhoon. Over 300,000 people were evacuated to safety in advance as a preemptive move, but little could be done to prepare the island nation for the intensity of the storm. Destruction from Typhoon Rai flattened villages, uprooted trees, and left 3 million people without electricity. Natural disasters like this are something the Philippines deals with on a regular basis. It is estimated that an average of about 20 storms and typhoons strike the Philippines each year. But what made this storm so significant was the power it sustained as it moved across 9 different landmasses in the southern Philippines. That's over 800 kilometers. There are concerns among experts that climate change is making typhoons and other natural disasters more ferocious. Typhoon Rai is just the latest example of how the effects of climate change are leaving devastating consequences and taking a toll on the lives of millions. Chris Ma and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
A woman infected with COVID-19 while working with infected lab rats at Taiwan's top research body was not following procedure. That's the word from health officials on Monday. An investigation at the research institute Academia Sinica has produced 3 possible routes of infection. One is direct respiratory infection. The institute says the woman was not conducting the experiment in a biosafety cabinet or wearing an N95 mask. A second possibility is via the woman's gloves. She was only wearing one pair of gloves when handling the infected animals. Officials say the third mistake came when she left the lab by removing her mask first before the rest of her protective gear. Thousands have taken to the streets in Brussels for a third time, protesting the Belgian government's reinforced COVID-19 restrictions. Police used tear gas against protesters, throwing stones and fireworks. There have been similar protests in other cities, including Paris and London, as the Omicron variant is spreading rapidly, prompting tougher lockdown measures. Sports leagues in the US and Europe are being forced to cancel games due to a spike in new cases of COVID-19 among players and coaches. In the US, the NBA and National Hockey League have both postponed games. The Brooklyn Nets basketball team played last week with only 8 players out of a squad of 15. The rest weren't allowed on court due to testing positive or having close contact with a positive case. Almost 100 National Football League players also tested positive last week. And in Europe, clubs in the English Premier League are set to meet on Monday after 10 games were cancelled due to soaring case numbers among teams, including Leicester and Manchester United. The Arctic in the Northern Hemisphere has been called the closest thing the world has to a ticking clock. It's warming at roughly twice the rate of the global average. Over the years, international researchers have worked in the Arctic to gather crucial data on climate change. And for the first time, Taiwanese scientists are lending a hand. Alice Cheng has more on their historic 28-day expedition.
This magnificent polar scenery was taken by an Arctic expedition from Taiwan. In July, 3 researchers from National Central University traveled over 7,000 kilometers to reach one of the world's main observation centers in Svalbard. That's midway between the northern coast of Norway and the North Pole. It's the first time Taiwan has been able to collect first-hand data.
我们差不多到波浪的 station. Finally made it. Yeah, get excited. 终于到了。
The Arctic is considered an early warning system for global warming, as changes often happen there first. So, various countries have sent scientific expeditions to conduct research. The Taiwanese team's arrival at the Polish Polar Station in the eastern part of Svalbard is just the beginning of their adventure. Carrying nearly 10 kilos of equipment, the Taiwanese team hiked deep into the glacier, under the risk of slipping on the ice and falling into crevices. Despite these difficulties, they successfully deployed 40 seismometers.
这已经是我们放的第32个站了。那这边的话是我们最靠近冰川南侧的一个站。
This loud noise is why the team came. It's called an icequake, and it occurs when the temperature rapidly drops.
冰震就是冰裂隙产生破裂，然后它破裂之后可能是打到地上，或是裂掉的时候产生地震动。所以你可以知道说，这个温度的变化，那冰震的数量多少，这基本上都可以做一个长期的变化。
It isn't just the researchers collecting data. The local animals are also curious about the uninvited visitors. Experts worry that this creature's wonderland will vanish from the world.
We are losing the Svalbard we know. We are losing the Arctic as we know it because of climate change. This is a forewarning of all the hardship and problems that will spread around the planet. It is important to stop it as quickly and as soon as possible.
The team from Taiwan was proud to finally contribute to international research on global warming.
真的可以拿到北极的资料去做这个全球变迁研究，这个意义其实非常不一样，就代表说我们台湾或者我们中央大学，我们基本上有这个能力，已经可以跨出去了。
As the international community continues to discuss how to save the disappearing Arctic, these 3 university scientists have not only displayed the academic strength of their country, they've also shown that Taiwan can play an active role in finding global answers. Alice Chen for TaiwanPlus.
Thanks for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. We leave you with footage of thousands of Santa Clauses in a charity run through Madrid, Spain, to raise money for victims of the volcanic eruption on the Spanish island of La Palma. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. Stay safe and see you next time.